In Mundus, there is a recurring moment in long-lived polities when nothing dramatic happens. No famine, no invasion, no rebellion, no financial panic. Budgets pass, harvests arrive, courts function, children assume tomorrow will resemble yesterday. It is during a year like this, not during crisis, that civilizations begin to misread themselves. When feedback grows distant. In the early life of a polity in the mortal veil, error produces visible consequence. A flawed tax sparks unrest. A weak border invites attack. A mismanaged harvest causes hunger. Cause and effect sit close together. Institutions are treated as tools. Beliefs are understood as provisional. Revision happens because it must. But during prolonged stability, the distance between cause and effect grows. Policies remain because nothing forces change. Arrangements persist because they continue functioning. Institutions operate without visible strain. Humans respond quickly to immediate feedback. They reason poorly about absent feedback. So when nothing goes wrong, the conclusion feels reasonable. This structure works. What is not examined is whether it would still work under different conditions. High Veyra, the stable year. In High Veyra, a coastal polity in Mundus, there had been no war in 23 years. Grain moved reliably from inland plains to ports. The treasury reported surplus. Border garrisons filed routine logs. Trade treaties renewed automatically. Inside the council chamber, calm prevailed. A junior clerk proposed reviewing the founding charter's revenue allocation ratios. Inland districts reported slower growth than coastal sectors. They requested adjustment. The treasurer reviewed the figures. Growth disparity is within acceptable variance. No instability detected. Why revise a functioning structure? The vote to table the review was unanimous. Not out of arrogance, not out of suppression, but because the system was functioning. What actually begins after the vote? From the council's perspective, stability preserved, markets reassured, no unnecessary disruption. From the inland district's perspective, their concern had been dismissed. Formal revision was unlikely, so they adapted privately, not rebellion. Adjustment. Inland guilds began coordinating outside the formal taxation framework. They created informal credit systems, routed goods through coastal intermediaries, shared pricing information privately to reduce disadvantage. Trade continued. Revenue remained stable. Numbers looked healthy. But something changed. The official charter was no longer the main organizing force of the economy. It became one layer among several. The council did not notice. The treasury still reported. Revenue steady. Collection efficiency high. The charter had assumed tax flow equals economic alignment. Now tax flow reflected economic workarounds. Private actors were compensating for structural rigidity. The more citizens compensated for design flaws, the more competent the design appeared. The misreading defined. The error was simple. They confused currently functioning with structurally aligned. Functioning meant, under present conditions, nothing was breaking. Structural alignment would have meant the system could adjust smoothly if conditions shifted, but adjustment was not required during calm. And what is not required is not practiced. What is not practiced weakens. The political consequence. Inland leaders learned something from the vote. Formal petitions did not produce change, so political energy shifted. Less effort went into reform proposals. More effort went into private coordination, quiet alliances, economic leverage. Inside the council chamber, debates grew shorter. Consensus came faster. From inside, this felt like maturity. From the margins, it felt like irrelevance. Dissent had not disappeared. It had relocated. Institutional atrophy amendment procedures went unused. Review committees met less often. Fewer officials gained experience in structural reform. Reform is a skill. If it is not exercised, it weakens. Years later, when external conditions eventually shifted, a trade route disruption, a tariff conflict, the machinery for revision was slower and less confident. The problem was not that the system had once been wrong. It was that its capacity to change had quietly declined. Identity hardens. As stable years continued, memory compressed. The charter was no longer remembered as a compromise forged under strain. It became the foundation of High Veyra's strength. The narrative shifted from, we survived because we adjusted, to, we are stable because our structure is correct. Once a structure becomes identity, revising it feels like attacking oneself. That emotional shift did not arrive with speeches or decrees. It arrived gradually, through repetition of success. Why no one felt it? Nothing exploded. There was no crisis. Revenue remained stable, trade continued, growth persisted. From inside High Veyra, the decade after the vote felt successful. From an analytical perspective within Mundus, something else had occurred. Adaptation moved outside formal institutions. Apparent stability depended on informal correction. The culture of revision weakened. The polity had not collapsed. It had become less aware of its own fragility. The pattern across Mundus. This pattern repeats across human polities in Mundus. When feedback shortens, systems adapt visibly. When feedback lengthens, confidence increases. When confidence increases, revision slows. When revision slows, flexibility declines. And when flexibility declines, stability becomes conditional, dependent on unchanging circumstances. The most stable year is rarely the safest. It is often the year when a civilization quietly decides, "We have figured this out," and means it sincerely. That is the moment it begins to misunderstand itself. Not because it is corrupt, not because it is foolish, but because comfort reduced the need to change, and over time, reduced the ability to change. Not collapse, drift. And in Mundus, drift is often the beginning of fracture.